Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a special report of Talk with Antonio. I am your host, Antonio. It is September 1st, 2024. I want to wish you all a happy Labor Day weekend. Everyone, please be safe because there's a bunch of crazies that are drunk driving, all that stuff. It's just a very dangerous time right now to be driving, be on the streets right now. So, I did record this past week, but apparently the file when I recorded the file was corrupted, and I couldn't upload it to my program. I couldn't edit, so it was pretty messed up. So right now I am re-recording today on September 1st, 2024, and originally I was going to be talking about the thing with Hulk Hogan right now, but that's right now on the back burner. That will be recording for the coming week for my podcast. Right now, let's talk about something that happened this past week. I was at work I was at work, and then I was on my break, and then all of a sudden I heard that one of the big wrestlers that I grew up watching in the mid-90s was Sid, or Sycho Sid. That's how I knew him when he was in the WWF. Then Sid Vicious, and he started as Sid Justice. And I heard that he passed away at the age of 63 due to cancer. Man. It was mind-blowing to an extent, because I remember watching Sid in the mid-90s and in his later career in WCW. First and foremost, he was born Sidney Raymond Eudy on December 16th, 1960, on Moses Lake, Washington. And he was trained by Tojo Yamamoto. He started his career after an encounter with Randy Savage and his brother Lanny Poffo. And he teamed up with Austin Idol and wrestled the team of Nick Bockwinkel and Jerry Lawler. He began his career in CCW Continental Championship Wrestling in 1987 under the masked wrestler persona Lord Humongous. When I was growing up, as I said before, I started watching professional wrestling September 1992. So around that time, Sid was already gone from the WWF at that time. So he was already he was already out, and he went to WCW later on. So let's start from the beginning. First, like I said, he was born named Sidney Raymond Eudy on December 16th, 1960, on Moses Lake, Washington. And he started in the Independents. He started as Lord Humongous, and he debuted on, let me see, because right now, first let's talk about Sid as a character. When I started watching him in 1995 or 94, I believe, he started out, and during the time that I watched, was as the bodyguard of Shawn Michaels around 1994, I believe. And it says here that he started out in WCW. Back then, it was still part of the NWA affiliate, from 1989 to 1991. It says here that in 1989, Eudy signed Sid. I'm not going to call him by his government name, because I personally believe that is disrespectful. I just said his full name just as what he was known as, but calling him by his first name, this is something that I want to clear out, that I want to be perfectly clear. I'm sorry. There's a podcaster somewhere in the up north of North America who has a tendency to call the wrestler by their government name in the wrestling and their wrestling name. Look, okay, I'll give you an example. like certain wrestlers like Bret Hart, Sid, etc. They use their government name as their wrestling name, which is a different story. Like, for example, like Bret Hart, Sid, I forget which others, but those are the ones that pop into my mind right now. But in terms of calling, like, for example, The Undertaker, I call him The Undertaker. I'm not going to call him by his government name. Like this dude who has a tendency to call Mark Undertaker Calloway. I'm not calling him that. I'm just saying that he uses that. And another is Sting. He calls Sting Steve Borden. Like, what the fuck? Really? Like, for this dude just to call these wrestlers by the government name, I just think that that's just like, what the fuck? Is he friends with them? And he claims to be he calls it his industry? I personally am not a fan of that. I just personally think that you just call them by their wrestling name. If they use their government name, totally different story. But if you call a wrestler by the government name with a character, I think that's just fucking disrespectful. I'm sorry. But as I was saying, though, it says that Sid started using his name, Sid Vicious. He took the name from the punk rock musician of the same name who played bass for the Sex Pistols, and that stuck with him in WCW. It says here that he went to WCW. He made his televised debut by defeating Dwayne Bruce on June 17th, 1989 on the episode of WCW Pro. He was slated as a singles wrestler, but eventually paired with Danny Spivey to form the Skyscrapers and were managed by Teddy Long. The Skyscrapers feuded with the Road Warriors and the Steiner Brothers. During that time, he incorporated the Powerbomb as his finishing move, and that will be synonymous with his career. It says that the tag team was short-lived, and Sid was replaced by Mean Mark Callius after suffering a broken rib and a punctured lung during a match with the Steiner Brothers on November 15th at Clash of the Champions 9. And it says here that for a cup of coffee, if you could say that, he was briefly with the Four Horsemen. He was a member of that famous stable in wrestling up until it says here that he was. It says here that up until 1991, you could say, that he was already in negotiations with the WWF at that time, despite being offered a contract with a huge offer and a promise for a world championship run, and he left WCW. It says here that on May 28th, 1991, Sid made his WWF debut in an untelevised segment attacking the Mountie following the Mountie's open offer. On June 8th episode of Primetime Wrestling, vignettes began airing promoting his WWF debut and introducing him as Sid Justice. And you know what? I have seen when he debuted on YouTube, and let me say, people, Sid already had the look of being he was going to be a huge star in the WWF, but why was he not pushed beyond that? Is just mind blowing. I guess because probably had to do with the politics of Hulk Hogan, because we all know in the early 90s, Hulk Hogan's power was starting to wane, and other people were coming in like Sid, the people like Bret the Hitman Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Ultimate Warrior, etc. They were all like coming in and starting, replacing Hulk Hogan. But it says here that he made his debut on WWF television on July 20th episode of WWF Superstars. On August 26th at SummerSlam, he served as a guest referee in a handicap match pitting the Ultimate Warrior and WWF champion Hulk Hogan against the Triangle of Terror, a.k.a. it was Sergeant Slaughter, Colonel Mustafa, and General Adnan. It says here that later that night, Sid saved Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth from an attack at the hands of Jake Roberts and The Undertaker at the newlyweds couple's reception. During this time, Sid defeated Kato in his first televised match on September 21st episode of WWF Superstars. Sid competed for the vacant WWF Championship in the Royal Rumble match on January 19th, 1992. Sid entered at number 21 and was among the final four wrestlers, along with Hogan, Randy Savage, and Ric Flair, before he eliminated both Savage and then Hogan, and leaving himself and Flair in the ring. And you know, this is something that I've seen, it's all over the internet, where Ric Flair pushes Sid over the top rope, but along that, Hulk Hogan is also pulling the arm of Sid, so he's basically, Hogan helped fucking Ric Flair to eliminate Sid, so he became the new WWF champion. And it says here that less than a week later, on January 25th, episode Superstars, WWF President Jack Tunney held a press conference to determine Flair's opponent at WrestleMania 8. Before Tunney revealed his decision, Sid stood up as if Tunney were to call his name. Yet to Sid's annoyance, Tunney chose Hogan, giving a menacing glare in Hogan's direction and calling Tunney's decision, quote, bogus. Sid later apologized to Hogan and teamed up with him to face The Undertaker and Flair on Saturday Night's Main Event 30th. And it says here that during the match, he double clotheslined The Undertaker and Flair. Hogan reached Sid to tag. Sid refused and walked out of the match, turning him heel in the process. Hogan won the match by disqualification. And then later on, he appeared as a guest on Bruce the Barber Beefcake's The Barbershop. Knowing that Hogan was the friend of Beefcake, was not in the arena, he threatened Beefcake. And I've seen episodes on clips on that on YouTube. He threatened Beefcake. And then later on, at WrestleMania 8, Sid lost to Hogan by disqualification when Whippleman jumped into the ring to get involved. And then later on, after the match, Sid and Papa Shango attacked Hulk Hogan. But then all of a sudden, that's like the most famous clip that's played all over the world. The Ultimate Warrior, who was returning, he stormed into the running to the ring, and he saved Hogan. It says here that he was about to embark with a feud with the Ultimate Warrior. Sid was. But it says here that the story was that Sid was angry at the Warrior for saving Hogan at WrestleMania 8. Sid wrestled Warrior at 2 house shows, both of which Warrior won by disqualification. But it says here that after wrestling Warrior in Boston on April 26, Sid voluntarily quit the company due to disagreements with the Warrior and WWF management, in particular about the outcome of his match with Warrior. The WWF replaced Sid with Papa Shango in the feud with Warrior. We all know. Everyone knows. Who remembers the feud of that? How that went. Which I thought it was pretty... Now that I'm older, seeing what happened to Warrior and Papa Shango, that was so fucking cartoony-ish. Now it's laughable to begin with. Then later on, in 1993, on May 23rd, Sid, under his Sid Vicious name, returned to WCW as a mystery competitor of Colonel Robert Parker against Van Hammer at Slamboree. So this is why I never knew about Sid prior to that, because like I said, when I started watching in September 1992, Sid was already gone. So I didn't knew about Sid later on when he returned to the WWF. And it says here that on February 20th, prior to that, he was in the Independents and all that stuff, but he returned to the WWF on February 20th, 1995, on the episode of Raw as the new bodyguard of Shawn Michaels. And it says here that he returned under the monkier Sycho Sid. But Sid is, when he returned, when I saw him for the first time, he had like a very kooky character, you could say. It was a very kooky character. and he was a new bodyguard of Shawn Michaels, and he was basically just become the new bodyguard for WrestleMania 11 again when Shawn Michaels fought against Big Daddy Cool Diesel for the main event at WrestleMania 11 for the WWF Championship. And I remember watching that pay-per-view at a friend's house or a cousin's house, if I do remember correctly. It was the pay-per-view in all circumstance was mediocre at best. I'm sorry. And I saw the match, and Sid interfered and cost Shawn Michaels the match, and Diesel won by disqualification. The following night on Monday Night Raw, Vince McMahon interviewed Shawn Michaels, Sid accompanying him, and I'm gonna play a clip right here. The clip is courtesy by WWE, and you'll see what's gonna happen right now. Let me see. Give me 1 second.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shawn Michaels. Ladies and gentlemen, Shawn Michaels. No more sexy. Got the looks. I said shit. I don't appreciate McMahon leaving me all alone with that Sycho Sid in the building, but Shawn Michaels is looking good here tonight on Raw. Well, Shawn Michaels, and of course, Sid, it's the day after WrestleMania. Waist is looking pretty good, but no WWF Championship bout. How do you feel?
My back is screaming. I am sore from head to toe, and to be perfectly honest, I feel like I've been run over by a steamroller.
Maybe that would be a diesel-powered steamroller.
Yuckity yuck, McMannequin. Look, Big Daddy Cool, you were not the only one that had trouble forgetting about our friendship during that match last night. I also had trouble focusing. But you know something? As a WWF competitor, as an athlete, I know that there is nothing, and I mean nothing, more important than the World Wrestling Federation Championship, which you hold, Big Daddy. So therefore, since we're such good friends, I graciously accept your invitation to a rematch.
You can tell that Sid's being annoyed right there. He's all nodding and stuff. But this is where the shit gets real.
When I win, and rest assured, I will win. Big Daddy, I'll return the favor.
All right, but what about Sid, the comments made by Diesel?
Look, as far as Sid is concerned, I can live my life just fine without a bodyguard, thank you. I got
Sid's
here
right there like, what the
because
fuck?
of the Heartbreak Kid. Quite honestly, I don't need a bodyguard. And
Right now, this is where Sid's just looking at him, and that's where he starts name calling him. And I when I was watching the first time back in '95, I was like getting a kick how Sid just snapped on that little puke that he calls him. And we all know, and like if everyone has listened to my past podcasts, everyone knows how I feel about towards Shawn Michaels. I never really cared about that guy, and yes, I am biased. I am a staunch Bret the Hitman Hart fan. I never cared for Shawn Michaels. Yes, I will give him credit. He has had a great career, but is he the best in my eyes? No. So But like right now, like Sid is just looking at like, what the fuck? And this is where shit gets real. I just get a kick by watching this.
And I certainly don't need a bodyguard to cause the referee to turn his ankle and cost me the World Wrestling Federation Championship. So, as far as the rematch is concerned, Big Sid, I'm going to do you a favor, big man. In this rematch, I'm giving you the night off.
Here we go.
Let me tell you something, you stupid little puke.
Uh-oh.
As we stand here, and as days have gone by, I get the feeling you would believe these things that you're saying.
Wait a minute, we're going to have to take a break.
I knew
Let's
it.
just cool off a moment, please.
No, you really believe these things, and I'm going to tell you something, boy. You don't give me the night off. You don't give me nothing but respect. And if you
We're in
don't,
trouble. We got to take a
I'll
break.
get your stinking.
All right, now here's
Those
what you
are the
didn't see,
commercial
ladies and
break.
gentlemen. Now, Sean was hurting, and he had had enough of Sid. Look at him get right into Sid's face. Look at Sid backing up from Shawn Michaels. Look.
I've been beat up by bigger and better people than you, but nobody has been able to keep me down. You want some of this pit bull? You can have it, because I'm in no mood. I'm beat up, I'm tired, and I'm sore, and I don't need your crap.
Okay.
There's where he jumps in.
As far as this...
And people were actually cheering for Sid there, even though Shawn was quote-unquote the heel. And Sid's just kicking Shawn Michaels right there. And people were cheering for Sid. You can hear that. He does that first powerbomb. Oh, man. That did not look good. Oh, that looked painful, though. Yeah, he's going to give him the second power bomb.
Sid continues to relish in attempting to destroy the man who brought him back to the World Wrestling Federation.
And people were cheering for Sid. Can you believe that? He was a quote-unquote heel.
Sid living up to his moniker, known as Sycho Sid. Sid was completely out of control. And
The third power bomb.
You have to wonder just how many power bombs, how much damage would Sid have done to Shawn Michaels' back? It was obvious that was the area that Sid wanted to attack. Michaels had made reference to it earlier.
And right now, Sid's putting his foot on Shawn Michaels' back, the boot.
Shawn Michaels berating him verbally. Until, ladies and gentlemen,
And Diesel comes in to save Shawn Michaels.
Diesel arrived on the scene, and all of a sudden, Big Bad Sid turned into a coward. Look at him run. And Diesel asking for help to come in. And meanwhile, keeping his distance from the ring, this Sycho, this Sid. And the look of concern on Diesel's face told the entire story. Yes, it had been Shawn Michaels the very night before who had faced Diesel for the title. But all that aside, it came down to Diesel keeping this gutless lunatic, this loose cannon away from doing yet more damage to Shawn Michaels.
And that process, you know, it's funny how both Shawn Michaels and Sid were heels up until that point, and you can hear the clip that when Sid was power bombing and was just kicking Shawn Michaels around, people were actually cheering for that guy. And then later on in that year, around the first WWF In Your House that happened in May, it was WWF champion Big Daddy Cool Diesel against Sid, and Diesel won by disqualification. Then later on, and if I do remember correctly, he did become part of the $1 Million Corporation around April 17th, and he just floundered around during that time, and he left later on throughout that year. I think it was the last pay-per-view that he appeared in 1995 was on December 17th, WWF In Your House Seasons Beatings. And it says here that he teamed up with 1-2-3 Kid to against the Smoking Guns, which the Smoking Guns won. And then later on, after that, Sid left the WWF after a serious neck injury. But later on in 1996, around July 8th, during that year, Shawn Michaels won the WWF Championship against Bret Hart on WrestleMania 12. At WrestleMania 12, I'm sorry. And then later on, I believe it was King of the Ring of that year. It was Shawn Michaels who fought against British Bulldog. But then later on, Cam Cornette. You know how it was Cam Cornette. It was Vader, the late British Bulldog, and the late Owen Hart. And then later in the match, they were all beating up Shawn Michaels. Then at that time, WWF Intercontinental Champion Ahmed Johnson and the Ultimate Warrior came to help Shawn Michaels. It was going to be let me see if I'm reading this right here. It was supposed to be let me see. I'm trying to read this. I'm sorry if I'm taking time here. I'm so sorry, people. I'm just I'm just reading what it says here. Okay. It says here that on July 8th, 1996, Sid returned on the Sycho Sid again. And it says here that he was more of a strident-voiced and intense character, prone to radically unstable mannerisms such as his random competitive stares off into the distance and excessive eye-blinking, laughter turned sudden seriousness, and menacing fist bumps with fans during entrances. It says here that in his return, he replaced the Ultimate Warrior, who had left the WWF at that time, for a 6-man tag team match, teaming with former rival Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson against Vader, Owen Hart, and British Bulldog in the main event of WWF In Your House International Incident on July 21st. It says here that the following night, Sid started a feud with the British Bulldog, whom he defeated at SummerSlam. And then later on, at In Your House Mind Games, during the WWF Championship match between Shawn Michaels and Mankind, Michaels went for the pinfall on Mankind until Vader came out, broke up the count, and attacked him, which got Mankind disqualified. And after the match, Mankind and Vader double-teamed Shawn Michaels until Sid came out to make the save and brawl with Vader. And on October 20th of In Your House, Buried Alive, Sid defeated Vader despite interference from his manager, Jim Cornette, earning a match against Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship at Survivor Series. But before I get into that, it said I mentioned that Sid replaced the Ultimate Warrior because Warrior had left WWF because of disagreements with Vince McMahon. And then I remember watching this on Monday Night Raw of how Jim Cornette was all happy that he beat the living shit out of Ultimate Warrior. He was all like via satellite. Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson were just standing there, and all of a sudden behind Ahmed Johnson, Sid appears. And here's the clip. This is courtesy of WWE, by the way.
Jim Cornette back in the locker room area. You don't seem too upset over whom Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson are going to choose as a partner.
Why would I be upset? It's been a real productive night for Camp Cornette because the Ultimate Warrior's out of the picture in more ways than one. And Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson, they're just bluffing. They're trying to buy time. They ain't got no partner.
They don't have anybody, do they, Jimmy?
Of course not, King, because nobody in their right mind would step into that spot to be their partner in that 6-man tag. After what we just did a little while ago to the Warrior,
right.
I happen to know that all the WWF superstars, they already have prior commitments.
Yeah.
So nobody in their right mind would step into it. All the other guys are taken. So Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson, you're bluffing. July 21st, International Incident, I promise you this. The 3 members of Camp Cornette are going to take real good care of the 2 of you because you're coming to a gang fight and you're forgetting to bring your own gang.
Oh, yeah! All right, thank you very much. Let's take you out of Shawn Michaels, Ahmed Johnson,
This is
standing by.
via
Jim,
satellite,
we're
by
running
the
out of time. Whom have you chosen?
Jim Cornette, we don't bluff. This is the World Wrestling Federation. Boy, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and you should have folded. Surprise, surprise. Look what we have for Camp
Here's Sid.
Cornette. My.
Psycho shit! You're looking at me! And you're probably asking yourself, Shawn Michaels, what have you done? Yeah, twice he's opened the gates of hell, and he has released me. This time for you, Cornette, and the Cornette camp. There's nothing. There's no good news. Because I can hear you. I can hear you screaming out for help. For help. But there's no one there.
I'd much rather be on this team, believe me.
There's no one there.
Thank you, gentlemen, and Jim Cornette.
Put the camera back on me. What are you trying to do to me? Girl,
Sid wasn't a very intense dude. And this is like when I was starting to like take notice of him. He was a very likable guy. I mean, and he's actually considered the only dude at that time that he defeated both Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship at Survivor Series of that year of 1996, and he also defeated Bret the Hitman Hart at In Your House It's Time in December of that year. And I do remember watching the pay-per-view of Survivor Series. That was the main event, and people were actually cheering for Sid, even though he was the quote-unquote heel. And Shawn Michaels was the quote-unquote babyface, but he was being booed. And if y'all got to remember, it was taking place in Madison Square Garden, New York City. Everyone knows that if you want to be a wrestler, especially in the WWE, if you want to make it, you have to win over the New York crowd. And very few wrestlers, I'm sorry, I am very, very sorry. Certain wrestlers have won over the New York crowd. Example, Bret the Hitman Hart. And New York loved that guy. And in the case of Shawn Michaels and Sid, people were choosing Sid over Shawn Michaels. Which was like, and he was a babyface, and people were booing that guy. And I remember watching the pay-per-view when they were counting 3, and Sid was doing heel mannerisms, and then he grabbed the camera from one of those tech guys, and the late Jose Lothario, who was the manager of Shawn Michaels at that time, got on the top of the ring, and Sid hit him in the chest. And then later on, when he hit him, Shawn Michaels gave him the super kick, and then later he looked at what the fuck's going on, and he looked at Jose Lothario, and he just didn't give a shit about the match. He was focused on Jose Lothario, and then he grabbed the camera again, and he hit Shawn Michaels in his back, and he said, "Fuck you," and people were cheering for him, and Earl Hebner was like, quote unquote, fainting in the ring. And Sid hit Shawn Michaels with the power bomb, and even the people in New York were like counting 1, 2, and I remember there was this one chick in the front, like on the left side. She was screaming no, and when they said 3, and people were like, yeah. And then when the late Howard Finkel announced that Sid was the new WWF champion, you could tell that Sid was pumped up. That he was like saying, "Yeah, I finally won! I won!" And Earl Hebner raised his hand, and he walked out the WWF champion at Survivor Series. And then later on that year, December, he defeated Bret the Hitman Hart at In Your House It's Time. But in January of 1997. Royal Rumble took place in San Antonio, Texas. Obviously, who do you think they were going to cheer? They were going to cheer for their boy toy, Shawn Michaels. And Sid lost. Later on, throughout that year, since Shawn Michaels won the WWF Championship that year, it was known that there was going to be the rematch of Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13. But we all know what happened that year. That fucking phony ass Shawn Michaels gave that "I lost my smile" speech. And even when I was a kid, and now as an adult, but when I was a kid, I saw that, I was like, look at this fuck. I even told my friends, like, look at this fucking guy. And my friends were Shawn Michaels fans, and they were like, oh, he's just like, they were just pretending. But when Shawn did that, I was fucking pissed. He just didn't want a job to Bret at that time. And lo and behold, I was right. Since that happened, they did that other In Your House Final Four, where they did the match against, it was Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Vader. Whoever was just going to be kind of like a Royal Rumble match. And Bret won the following night on Raw. Sid fought for the WWF Championship against Bret the Hitman Hart. Sid won via interference by Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Sid won the WWF Championship. He was going to fight against The Undertaker in the main event, WrestleMania 13. And then the match that Bret was going to fight against Stone Cold for the submission match, that is considered now in this day and age. It's always been one of the best matches of WrestleMania of all time. I don't care what people say. I love that match, and I am a fan of both Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret the Hitman Hart. But I was cheering for Bret at that time. And yeah, the main event of WrestleMania 13, The Undertaker won after interference by Bret the Hitman Hart, and he won. And he was supposed to wrestle Bret at the April In Your House pay-per-view at Mankind, but they were canceled because, again, Sid suffered that neck injury. He returned on June 2nd. Again, he fought against The Undertaker, where he failed to win the title from The Undertaker. It says here that on June 8th, Sid and the Legion of Doom lost to the Hart Foundation in a six-man tag team match after Owen pinned Sid with a roll-up. Sid defeated Owen the next night on Raw, and then afterwards he just left WWF once again in the summer to recover from a neck injury, and that will be at that time the very last time he will be appear on WWF television. Later on, he went into the Indies again. He appeared in ECW, and I've seen clips of Sid appearing in ECW. He was being cheered like a lot. And then later on June 13th of 1999, at the Great American Bash, because of at the advice of Kevin Nash and the late Scott Hall, since they were all friends, they told Sid to rejoin WCW, and lo and behold, he did. And he took the Millennium Man gimmick. And he faced Kevin Nash on July 5th. And, Sid's second run in WCW, I would say, because, okay, look, before I continue, I have, now that I'm older, I have different views on WCW in this day and age. And I would say Sid's second run in WCW sucked completely, if you ask me. I mean, they did push the guy. I mean, he was getting paid accordingly. But, I don't know, like, me personally, what did the career of Sid do in WCW? Personally, nothing, if you ask me. I thought he was just floundering around. He won his what's his name? I think it's his only United States championship. Then later on, it says here that he defeated Chris Benoit at Fall Brawl to win his first and only WCW United States championship. He feuded with Bill Goldberg, but that his feud with Bill Goldberg, I thought it was entertaining because I remember seeing an episode of Nitro where Sid was walking out to the parking lot to walk to his car, and the car was flattened, and you could see Sid was yelling, "Goldberg, Goldberg!" And then in the following year, he turned face, and he won He was placed in a match that sold out on January 16th to fill the suddenly vacant WCW World Heavyweight Championship after Bret Hart was forced to relinquish it due to a concussion. Sid lost to Chris Benoit, but again, the title was vacated as Benoit left the WWF the next day. But I have seen this interview with Sid that he does with Hannibal, and he said that they told he was just told they just told him he just did what he was told to, and I'm gonna play a clip here of what Sid said when he wrestled against Chris Benoit. Give me 1 second. Let me see. Let me find it right here, people. Okay, this is courtesy of Hannibal TV.
You had some historical matches, I guess, for bizarre reasons with Chris Benoit with the WCW title change just before he left the company. What was the whole deal with that?
Simple. Chris, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, and Shane Douglas, they were starting up a petition in the locker room trying to get everybody to sign it to say, let's get rid of Kevin Sullivan and bring back Vince Russo, because Vince Russo was making stars of a lot of undernamed people that weren't going to ever be stars.
Okay, this is something that has been proven true. If y'all remember, to the people that listen to my podcast on the episode of the 4-part of Who Killed WCW, I will give Vince Russo credit that he did push people that they were not going to be like main eventers, because of in WCW at that time, everything was being hogged by Hogan, Hall and Nash, and all these other guys that were already main eventers. Well, that they were not going to give other people a chance, and I have talked about that a lot. Excuse me. And Vince Russo came. And in the episode, I think it was in the 3rd episode of Who Killed WCW, that a lot of wrestlers went up to him and asked him, like Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Rey Mysterio Jr., to say, "Hey, can you help me out?" and all that stuff. And he did. Vince Russo did that. And this is and it's been proven here by what Sid Vicious said, the late Sid Vicious. I'm sorry.
So I remember them coming to me, Terry Taylor at the gym that day. He goes, well, we're going to put Chris over you today and he's going to take the belt. I said, I don't care. I don't think it's a good decision, but it doesn't bother me at all. So during the match, when they're going over, they came to me and said, Sid, when he puts that crossface on you, we want you to slip your leg under the bottom rope. I didn't know why. I just did what I was asked. So then as soon as we came to the curtains, they fired him, And I don't know why they did that to fire him, but they did. As soon as they fired him, and then Kevin Nash put it back on me the following night on Monday Night Nitro.
It's probably one of the dumbest booking decisions in history.
It probably was, for sure.
What was he like outside the ring, and did you have any premonitions that he may have had a dark side to him?
No. I'm going to tell you something, man. Chris Benoit, to me, I'll never forget it. After it happened.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to continue with that clip. I'm sorry. Right now, he was just talking about Chris Benoit, but before he was mentioning about how in the sold out pay-per-view, Chris defeated Sid Vicious. The late Chris Benoit defeated the late Sid Vicious, and y'all heard what happened. And it says here later on that they won. Sid won. Let me see. It says here. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second, people. It says here that from the year 2000, he was the champion, and he retained it at Super Brawl and Uncensored. And it says here that later on, he returned on November 27th of Nitro, that he was going to be a challenger for Scott Steiner's WCW World Heavyweight Championship at Starrcade, and he failed to win the world title. But, and this is like the other thing that Sid is very well known. But before I continue that, during his during Sid's run in WCW, he had some very comedical like segments, like for example, oh my god, and I have half the brain that you do. In the segment, they don't. I've looked all over YouTube. They don't show the entire segment of how Scott Hall comes up he shows up at the ring, and he introduces quote unquote Sid Vicious, but where in reality, it's Kevin Nash under a disguise, using a Sid mask. Then the real Sid comes out, and this is I don't know what month exactly it took place, but I know it was 1999. And Sid comes up, and you could tell that he fucked up, or I don't know, whoever wrote this, I don't know what the fuck was he thinking, but it was fucking comedy. And I'll put it on right now. This is WCW, but courtesy of WWE, by the way.
See, Nash, you can wear any Halloween costume you want to, but you know and I know that you're only half the man that I am. And I have half the brain that you do.
Oh my god, I'm sorry for laughing. You can tell like Sid fucked up, and then like right now they're gonna show Scott Hall saying something to Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall's laughing, but I don't know if you all can hear Kevin Nash laughing. Let's see if I can. All right, let me put this part. You can hear Kevin Nash laughing. Kevin Nash was laughing his ass off right there. Oh my god, that was fucking comedy right there. And you can see that one of the fans says, "Sid, everyone's gonna think you're a bitch." Oh my god, that was epic. That was extremely epic of Sid. But it was like throughout the year of 2000, Sid was the champion, and he really didn't really like do anything up until the pay-per-view of Sin, July 14th, 2001. Sin, would replace the sold out pay-per-view. And it says that Sid faced Scott Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, and the late Road Warrior Animal in a four corners match for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. And it says that during the match he suffered a near career-ending injury, and the one who told him to do more aerial moves was none other than that fucking piece of shit. Oh, I can't use the word. I'm sorry, but I will say this though: this fucking piece of shit, John Laurinaitis. He says here that, and I quote, John Laurinaitis allegedly felt that Sid needed to broaden his arsenal of wrestling moves and suggested that he tried aerial maneuver. Despite his quote unwillingness, Sid felt unnecessary for a wrestler of his size to do that type of high spots and did not feel comfortable doing them. And Sid was absolutely right. Look what the fuck happened to him. And you can't see it though, but you can hear the reaction, because in the pay-per-view they didn't show it at all, but it was shown the following night on Nitro, and you can hear the reaction of Tony Schiavone and Scott Hudson. And like, okay, this is again courtesy of WWE, by the way.
Watching the mystery opponent come in now. Sid Vicious up on top.
Oh, that is
look at the left foot.
That is so difficult to watch. We've seen it already.
Another angle.
Already so many times, and it's still just so...
Once again,
And when Sid lands, his ankle or leg breaks off like a twig. And when they show the camera on his face, he's like, my leg.
Isolated. The foot obviously, the compound fracture.
And I believe Jeff Jarrett talked about that with Conrad Thompson. And they, I don't know what was going on during the pay-per-view, but, because they couldn't focus. They could show Sid when he broke his leg. They were just like, I kind of forget. I haven't watched that pay-per-view in a while, and they don't even have it on Peacock. They have all the WCW pay-per-views with the exception of Sin. But that that actual pay-per-view, it's not available. You can only find clips here on YouTube. But that was, you could say, the end of at that time for Sid's career as a wrestler. It says here that the injury put Sid out indefinitely, and he had to retire. He pondered retiring from wrestling for good, and he also mentioned that he had about a year and a half left on his contract, and he was thinking about, back then, prior to hurting his leg, that he was going to do as far as his wrestling career. He wanted to ideally go out in a big pay-per-view like a WrestleMania or something like that, main event, leave like that and not come back again. And it says that he also he left WCW, but he sued the company. It says here that after WCW was bought out by the WWF in March of 2001, following surgery, he had to rehab. Sid had to rehab for 3 to 5 days per week, at least for the next year. And he was told by doctors, as usual, that he would never run again. And Sid set a goal of being able to do so. At first, he was limited to using a cane, but through extensive effort, he was not able to only walk again, but in time, run. And he filed a lawsuit against UWC. It was the Turner Holding Company, what remained of WCW's unpurchased assets, seeking redress for the injury that he sustained, but the fucking judge, as usual, ruled in favor of the UWC. So he made appearances in other independent shows in the Canadian-based Internet Wrestling Syndicate in 2004. He debuted in Memphis Wrestling in 2007. And on June 25th, 2012, Sid made his return to WWE as Sycho Sid in a match against Heath Slater. And that was actually like the first time he appeared on Raw since July 14th, 1997. And his first match since June 9th of 1997. But it says here that he will reappear on July 23rd, where he and other legends helped Lita take down Slater. But that will be the final time he would appear on WWE television. But I've actually read around, but it's been gone. But it says here that on August 26, 2024, Eudy died of cancer, specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, at the age of 63. And it says here that he'd been previously diagnosed with congestive heart failure and atrial fibrillation. Sorry if I butchered the name of it. And that night, a video package paying tribute to Sid aired during an episode of WWE Raw, with Damian Priest paying tribute by claiming that an in-ring segment with Rhea Ripley, quote, "We are the masters and rulers of the world," before they each simultaneously performed Sid's trademark chokeslam and powerbomb. But I do remember reading this. I think they changed it. I think it's 2021 that Sid was diagnosed with cancer, and it had to do with using Roundup, weed killer. I looked for it. I read it. I read it before, but they changed it. It said that in 2021, Sid had cancer due to him using Roundup killer, weed killer. I'm sorry. But yeah, and it says here that on it says that Sid, a month before he died, he made a plea. It says here that this is how it goes. Wrestling legend Sycho Sid made a last-ditch desperate plea to WWE just a month before he died. Heartbreaking tweet goes viral. And this is what he said, and I quote, "Hopefully 2025 will be the year that I get inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Time is ticking, so it's now or never for me. With Vince McMahon gone, the company is now more open to suggestions. Triple H needs to hear the voices of my fans." And this is something that I've noticed that WWE has a tendency to do. Prior to Sid's death, I think it was long overdue. Why they never inducted Sid into the WWE Hall of Fame while he was alive, I don't know. But I do know is certain WWF wrestlers of the past have never been inducted to the Hall of Fame due to disagreements with Vince McMahon or to lawsuits, etc. And I'll give you an example. In 2016, when King Kong Bundy died, how come they never inducted him when he was alive? Kind of find out later on that he was involved with in a lawsuit suing WWE, and I guess he was part of it, and he has never been called back. Not even when he's now dead. They never even mentioned inducting him posthumously, I believe. The same thing happened with the late Macho Man Randy Savage. While he was alive, they never inducted him, but when he passed away, they inducted him. But why induct him now that he passed away? They never inducted him while he was alive. I don't know why. And then they inducted other people that, in my opinion, didn't really deserve it. I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm sorry. If I sound a hater, I'm sorry. Like, for example, why was she inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame even before Medusa or Alundra Blaze, or even what's his name, Sycho Sid, King Kong Bundy, what's her name, Beth Phoenix? Why was she inducted before any of these names? There's other names in WWE that I think I don't know what are the reasons, but there are some which are very obvious reasons will never, ever be inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame. I'll give you an example. How come Ms. Elizabeth has been largely ignored? I've always been curious about that. And another one, this is obvious why she will never, ever be inducted. Nancy Benoit, better known as Woman in WCW. Because that's how I knew that person, because she was Woman. She was part of the Four Horsemen, and she was the valet of Chris Benoit. But it's very obvious why she will never be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Others, like I mentioned, King Kong Bundy, Demolition, even though they're still alive, they're just blacklisted. They're also blacklisted because they were also involved in that lawsuit that happened. But with Sid, I don't know what was the issue. Why was he never inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame prior to his death? And I'll bet now they're gonna do it next year, come WrestleMania 41. But why that time? It's already too late. WWE in that aspect should have inducted him before, when he was alive. They're gonna induct him now that he's dead. What for? It's too late now. I mean, it would have been awesome if he was still alive and they induct him. He would have been like saying like, "I am the master and the ruler of the world." Like, you know how Sycho Sid was. But sadly, that will never happen. And all I can say is, with Sid, thank you for the memories, Sycho Sid. Thank you for the memories. You had a great run in other companies, but that I remember, you had a great run in WWF, WWE. You had a great run in WCW. And rest in peace. You are sorely missing. You will be missed. Rest in peace, Sycho Sid. And to finish, let's put for the final time, let's put the theme of Sycho, Sid. Thank you for the memory, Sid. Sorry about that. That was the wrong one. Let's put the real one. Rest in peace, Sid. Thank you for the memories.